United States federal law requires the Navy to maintain 11 operational aircraft carriers. It is written into 10 U.S.C. Section 8062, a non-negotiable floor for national defense. 11 carriers, always. But there is a trick buried inside that statute. The word operational includes ships sitting in a dry dock with their reactor compartments cut open. A carrier that cannot launch a single aircraft, that cannot move under its own power, that has its nuclear fuel physically removed from the hull, still counts. By that generous definition, the United States has 11 carriers. By any honest definition of a warship that can sail and fight, the number is 6. Lie is a strong word. But what else do you call a number that includes ships with their reactors removed, their hulls cut open, and their propellers sitting on a warehouse floor? Right now, 5 of them cannot move. 1 is circling South America on its final voyage before its reactors are defueled for the last time. 2 are locked inside dry docks, their hulls sliced open for multi-year overhauls. 1 has been at sea for over 300 days, the longest carrier deployment since the Vietnam War, and the moment she returns, she will be chained to a maintenance pier. And the 5th is sitting in a dry dock in Bremerton, Washington, with its propellers removed. The law that demands 11 carriers has no clause for metal fatigue, no clause for industrial bottlenecks, no clause for the fact that only one shipyard on Earth can build them. This is Navy Decoded. Subscribe if you want to see how the math actually works, because today we are going to count the real number. The reason the law demands exactly 11 is a piece of arithmetic called the rule of thirds. At any given time, roughly 1/3 of the fleet is deployed forward. 1/3 is in a training cycle preparing for the next deployment, and 1/3 is in maintenance, scheduled overhauls, reactor work, hull repairs. Run the math, and 11 is the minimum that keeps 3 or 4 carriers forward at all times. That arithmetic is clean on paper. It assumes the system works as designed. It does not. The Optimized Fleet Response Plan, OFRP, was designed around a 36-month cycle with 7-month deployments. The Ford just spent 322 days at sea. That is not 7 months. That is nearly 11. The training pipeline is being compressed. Eisenhower finished a 15-month overhaul and was pushed through basic phase on an accelerated timeline to fill the gap. The maintenance pipeline is clogged. Stennis is running 14 months behind schedule in its overhaul, and every carrier behind it in the queue feels the delay. The rule of thirds did not survive contact with reality. It broke at the exact moment it mattered most, during a crisis. And crises are precisely when carriers exist. So we need to do something the law does not require. We need to count honestly. Start with the hulls that cannot move. CVN-68 Nimitz. Commissioned in 1975, she is now over half a century old, the oldest warship of her kind in history. She departed Bremerton in March 2026 on her final voyage, transiting south around the tip of South America because she is too wide for the Panama Canal. Her destination is Norfolk, Virginia, where her reactors will be defueled and her hull will be scrapped. Her decommissioning has been pushed to March 2027, but she will never deploy again. She is a museum piece completing its last lap. CVN-74 Stennis. She entered Newport News Shipbuilding in May 2021 for her refueling and complex overhaul, RCOH. This is a midlife nuclear refueling that every Nimitz-class carrier undergoes once, roughly at the 25-year mark. The work was supposed to take about 4 years. It is now 14 months behind schedule, with redelivery pushed to October 2026. Even after she leaves the shipyard, months of sea trials and crew certification stand between her and the next deployment. She is not a carrier. She is a construction site. CVN-75 Truman. She is currently pierside at Naval Station Norfolk, preparing for the most invasive procedure a warship can undergo. In June 2026, she enters Newport News Shipbuilding for her refueling and complex overhaul, RCOH. The work will take 4.5 years. She will not be available until early 2031. That is 5 years of absence for a ship that cost billions to build. And here is the bottleneck. Newport News has only one graving dock large enough for a carrier RCOH, Drydock 12. Stennis has to leave before Truman can enter, one ship at a time, one dock, one shipyard for the entire United States Navy. CVN-76 Reagan. She arrived in Bremerton in August 2024 and entered drydock in March 2025 for a drydocking planned incremental availability, DPIA. The initial contract was $75 million. The work is expected to last until August 2026. Until she is floated out, tested, and certified, that hull goes nowhere. CVN 78 Ford, the newest carrier in the fleet. She departed Norfolk on June 24, 2025, and has now been at sea for over 300 consecutive days, the longest carrier deployment since the USS Midway during Vietnam. She has operated across the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and the Caribbean. She is setting a record. And records in military operations are not trophies. They are receipts. Navy officials have warned that extended deployments of this length significantly increase the maintenance bill that follows. When the Ford finally returns, she faces a planned incremental availability estimated between 14 and 24 months. Count them. Nimitz, gone. Stennis, in the yard. Truman, entering the yard. Reagan, in the basin. Ford, still at sea, but already spoken for. 11 minus 5 is 6. Think of it like a hospital that advertises 11 operating rooms. 5 of them are gutted to the studs, with construction crews ripping out the floors. The sign on the building still says 11. The brochure still says 11. The law still says 11. But when the emergency comes, you cannot perform surgery with a building permit. 6 carriers. That is the real number. But even that number hides a deeper problem, because the Navy is not distributing those 6 evenly across the planet. It is pouring half of them into one single theater. Through the spring of 2026, the Navy maintained a triple carrier presence. 3 full strike groups committed to a single blockade, a posture sustained for weeks that has no modern parallel. 3 carriers, Ford, Lincoln, and Bush, concentrated in the waters around Iran. 3 flight decks, roughly 200 aircraft, more than 1,000 vertical launch cells across their combined escort screens. 14 acres of sovereign American territory floating in the Arabian Sea. The Ford has since departed for home. Eisenhower, freshly out of her 15-month overhaul, is now transiting the Atlantic to reinforce. But the numbers do not change. 2 or 3 carriers locked into the Middle East means the rest of the world gets whatever is left. And here is what is left. The Western Pacific, the theater the Pentagon itself calls the pacing challenge of the century, has 1 carrier. CVN 73 George Washington, forward deployed at Yokosuka, Japan. 1 flight deck covering the Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea, the Korean Peninsula, and the entire First Island chain. Roosevelt is underway in the Pacific running training exercises. Vinson is operating near Spain on the other side of the planet. Now apply physics. The distance from the Arabian Sea to the Western Pacific is over 5,000 nautical miles. A carrier strike group running at maximum speed, 30 knots or more, still needs 7 to 10 days to make that transit. Power does not teleport. If a crisis erupts in the Taiwan Strait while the fleet is concentrated around Iran, the response time is not measured in hours. It is measured in weeks. Imagine a city with 6 fire trucks. 3 of them are battling a blaze on the east side of town. If the west side catches fire, the response time is not the speed of the truck, it is the width of the city. Admiral Caudle, the Chief of Naval Operations, testified before Congress on May 12, 2026, that the fleet will have to begin cutting training, operations, and certification events by July 2026 unless supplemental funding is approved. The fleet is not just stretched thin. It is approaching the point where the act of fighting one fire prevents it from training to fight the next. The law wrote the number 11 specifically to prevent this scenario. It was built on a simple premise. The United States must be able to project combat power in 2 oceans at once, Middle East and Indo-Pacific, without robbing one to cover the other. With 6 deployable carriers and 3 of them locked into one theater, that premise is not strained. It is fiction. 6 carriers doing the work of 11. But there is one more brutal truth hiding in that number. Because those 6 are not equal. Congress counts them as if they are. The laws of thermodynamics disagree. Every time a congressman reads the number 11, he pictures 11 identical warships, interchangeable units of American power. The statute treats them that way. Engineering does not. The Nimitz-class carriers, 9 of the 11, are powered by the A4W nuclear reactor. It was designed in the 1970s. Each ship carries 2 of them. Together, they produce approximately 64 megawatts of electrical power. That was enough in 1975 when the Air Wing flew F-14 Tomcats and the ship launched them with steam catapults fed directly by reactor steam. The Ford class carries the A-1B reactor, 2 of them. Combined output, approximately 250 megawatts. That is roughly 4 times the generating capacity. And it was designed that way on purpose, because the Ford does not use steam catapults. It uses the Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System, EMALS, which runs on electricity. It uses the Advanced Arresting Gear, AAG, which runs on electricity. It operates the ANSPY-6 dual-band radar, which runs on electricity. Every major system on the Ford is electric. Think of it this way. You have a 15-year-old desktop computer with a 400-watt power supply. The case is enormous. It looks intimidating. But now you want to install a modern graphics card that demands 800 watts by itself. The case has not changed. The motherboard has not changed. But the power supply, the thing that actually makes everything run, cannot keep up. The system boots. It displays a desktop. But the moment you push it to full load, it throttles. That is the Nimitz class in a 21st century fight. The reactor cores have been replaced during RCOH, fresh uranium, good for another 25 years. But the electrical generation architecture was baked into the hull 50 years ago. New fuel does not rewire the ship. You cannot upgrade the power plant without rebuilding the vessel. Now push the math further. A Ford-class carrier with 250 megawatts has headroom, room to add directed energy weapons, room for the next generation of high-power radar, room for the electronic warfare suites that high-end combat demands. A Nimitz-class carrier with 64 megawatts has reached its ceiling. The architecture cannot grow. You cannot install a laser on a ship whose entire electrical budget is already spoken for. New fuel in the reactor does not rewire 50 years of electrical infrastructure. The Nimitz can launch aircraft. It simply cannot become the warship that the next war requires. 9 of our 11 carriers are fighting a 21st century war with a 1970s power grid, and the mandate that counts them has no column for megawatts. Step back and look at the building. The ground floor is empty. 5 carriers exist only as legal fictions. Steel locked-in facilities, unable to move, unable to fight. The count stops at 6. The second floor is unbalanced. Of those 6, half are committed to one corner of the globe, leaving the ocean where the next war is most likely to start with a single flight deck. And the top floor is aging. Even the carriers that can fight are doing so with electrical systems designed for a different era. The number the statute counts is 11. The capability the fleet actually owns is something smaller, older, and less lethal than that number implies. Each floor looks like it has a fix. Build faster, deploy smarter, upgrade the generators. 3 separate problems with 3 separate solutions. But the building has one foundation, and it was poured the moment someone decided to build a 100,000-ton nuclear warship and call it the primary unit of American sea power. A nuclear-powered supercarrier costs $13 billion to build. It takes 8 to 15 years from keel laying to commissioning. Only one shipyard on Earth, Newport News, Virginia, can do the work. Once in service, the ship requires a 4.5-year reactor refueling at its midlife point. Under the OFRP cycle, it spends roughly 1/3 of its operational life in maintenance, 1/3 in training, and 1/3 deployed. That means for every 3 years of existence, a carrier is available for forward operations for about 12 months. The second Ford-class carrier, Kennedy, CVN-79, has just completed builder's sea trials and is expected to deliver in March 2027. But delivery is not deployment. After handover, she must still complete acceptance trials, a shakedown cruise, post-shakedown repairs, air wing integration, and a full training cycle, a mandatory pipeline that takes at minimum 2 years before a carrier can operate anywhere. The third, Enterprise, CVN-80, will not deliver until March 2031. The fourth, Doris Miller, CVN-81, will not deliver until February 2034. Meanwhile, the oldest Nimitz-class ships are reaching the end of their 50-year hulls. Nimitz herself retires next year. The shipyard that builds replacements is the same shipyard that refuels the existing fleet. 1 dry dock, 1 queue. This is not mismanagement. This is the physics of the platform itself. The supercarrier is too expensive to build in quantity, too complex to maintain quickly, too large to distribute broadly, and too nuclear to refuel anywhere but one facility. The law that demands 11 carriers is not being violated by negligence. It is being violated by the thermodynamics, the metallurgy, and the industrial geometry of the very weapon it was written to protect. And that reframes the entire count. When we went from 11 down to 6, the instinct was to blame someone. The Navy, the shipyard, Congress. But there is no villain to fire. The deficit is structural. It is woven into the physics of what a nuclear supercarrier is. You cannot legislate your way past the speed of steel fatigue, the capacity of a dry dock, or the half-life of a reactor core. If you made it this far, you now know more about the carrier fleet than most members of Congress who vote on its budget. Hit subscribe, because the next video will show you what the Navy is building to replace what the physics just broke. The United States wrote the number 11 into federal law because it believed that was the minimum to control the world's oceans. 11 was the floor. Below that, the math broke. That number has broken, not because the Navy stopped trying, not because the shipyard stopped welding, but because the object at the center of the equation demands more time than the world is willing to give it. Half a decade to refuel, a decade to build, months to transit between theaters, and every year at sea accelerates the clock on the next overhaul. Physics is writing a different number than the law, and physics does not negotiate. The question is no longer whether the Navy can maintain 11 carriers. The question is whether this machine, the single most powerful conventional weapon ever built, is still the right unit of currency to buy naval dominance, or whether the era of the supercarrier is quietly bankrupting the very fleet it was designed to protect. We do not tell you what to think. We show you the numbers and let the physics speak.